I don't know, Mathilde is with us also? Yes, okay. And so if someone has some questions to ask about these subjects. Yeah, Peter?
Thanks. Three really interesting talks investigating different parts of the system. Cecile, I mean, several times you talked about insurance as a tool to facilitate learning and behaviour change. What's, in that context, what are the farmers learning? Are they learning to trust the DSS, or are they learning about a world whereby they don't need the DSS anymore because they can predict, they can guess the outcome accurately enough?
In the long run, that would be great. If they can learn how to use best management practices themselves without having to use the DSS, that would be perfect. But is that what you mean? Not necessarily.
Yes, well, there's two aspects here. One is the history of farmers' use of DSS is that very quickly they learn to predict what the model behind the DSS predicts, and they stop using it. And so
that's your experience?
That's in the literature as well, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a good thing. Behaviour's been modified, hopefully for the better. But the other thing, there are some risks that are unpredictable. You know, weather-related risks, until we can predict the weather, we can't predict that risk. And therefore, the role of insurance isn't to facilitate behaviour change. It's actually a risk mitigation tool, which I think, according to Julian's Rule 101 with insurance, is what insurance is about. So I'm just sort of wondering about teasing out your thinking in that study about what really the outcome you're looking for. Farmers able to predict the need to spray as well as the DSS and make the DSS redundant, which makes us as technologists cry, but it's good for the world. Or really to farmers to learn that these things are truly unpredictable and you need some risk mitigation in place.
So I would say that in our context, in the context of wine growing here in France and spraying, so DSS, the commercial versions of DSS, they tend to be very conservative. So they don't make you take too much risk. They optimize, but not too much. And this is why you can learn pretty quickly how to do this. But the type of DSS, like the one that Mark constructed, I can tell you that those two cooperatives that were very smart, where you had very smart people knowing very much how to optimize treatments and so on, they wouldn't be able to predict what the DSS predictions were. And they were very surprised sometimes, at least. There was one instance, at least, which was very striking, where they would have sworn that it was absolutely necessary to spray. They didn't want not to spray. They only decided not to spray because they were covered by the insurance, and there was something like, ha, 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 you're going to see what you're going to see, we know. And in fact, they were wrong. So, in fact, the model, the underlying agronomy model, and I think they're going to be more and more complex now, especially with big data and et cetera, they're too complex for human brain to really do the same today. And if you want to optimize, not if you want, of course, to sell a product that ensures that the customer is satisfied at all times, which means, okay, let's spray. So I'm not sure you can learn about this, but I completely agree with the fact that anyway, there's going to be residual risk. There are going to be mistakes. Even a very good tool is going to make mistakes sometimes. The idea is just you're not going to be able to protect against all this, and it's clear that insurance is needed for this underlying remaining risk. That is not something you can control for. I just didn't mention this because I was concentrating on this other aspect of insurance.
Thank you. Thank you, Cécile. Quite interesting modeling. and because I like economics, so sorry for that. Farmers are always are in asymmetric information conditions, whatever, okay? This is the rule for farmers when it comes to decide what to do. What I understood from your survey, and I think it's very complementary to what your colleague did, is that probably insurance tool, it's not enough, or it's not a good tool for farmers to go through ecological transition. Or, and probably this is the best result, it's not enough because it's not covered the bunch of asymmetric information that make them react not as expected in the models. And if I say that, it means that probably insurance schemes, it's one part of the solution, whatever you can solve the problem of moral hazard, but you need to complement with green fund. And in that sense, I mean, your work is quite interesting too, because using this choice experiment, you may assume that beyond what is acceptable for farmers to pay for insurance, you may complement with some support from green fund. I'm not convinced that green funds will come from Europe. I'm not believe that mesures agri-environnementales will solve the problem. But strong belief, like in France, there is a law that implement payments for ecosystem services that could be directed to complement insurance schemes. So, two conclusions, because you were saying collective insurance, etc. But I would like, from your results, I conclude something additional, probably not contradictory, probably, but additional one from the result you presented.
So I would say, and I'll let you answer. Yeah, in the V2F experiment, it was crucial that we had the subsidies from the Région Nouvelle-Aquitaine, because otherwise it was just impossible to find a creation of value between what was being saved by wine growers, which was really not much because pesticides are so cheap, and what was the cost of potential losses on, you know, wine from Bordeaux. That's super expensive. So we wouldn't have been able to create enough value in an insurance contract for it to be viable for all parties. So that's a very big point. So we needed subsidies. Our initial take was the subsidies were probably needed only as a temporary tool in order to foster learning. And after some point, maybe everything would be fine, and farmers would have revised their beliefs, insurers would have revised their beliefs, which is what happened to some extent in the experiment. And we wouldn't need any longer any subsidies. So subsidies will be a transitional tool. It's not so clear, and especially with climate change and this upward trend in losses, we see that it's very complicated for insurers to find a profitable activities in some contexts. And it's clear that we're going to have a residual risk. So I don't know indeed if farmers would be willing to support these costs.
Just one point, something we learned from what happened here and then in our large-scale survey is that in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, the region supported the premium. While in our case, we presented the scheme to farmers saying that the public support will be on the compensation. So they will pay the premium entirely, and then if something happens, they need to be compensated, then they will get more compensation thanks to public support. So this is, we wanted to, well, we cannot say anything on what they prefer, but in terms of public spending, you can see the difference. In case you subsidize premium, then you pay for each contract. If you only support when farmers are compensated, then you pay only for those that suffer losses. And also what you call green fund, here again, you pay for each hectare where there's a change in practices, independently whether the change of practices has generated some losses. While in the case of public support to green insurance, the public money will be used only for those cases where the change in practices has generated some losses. But we know also that there are some cases where, despite the transition, you have no losses or no increased risk. So that's also a way to save public money. So it's more costly in hectares compared to agri-environmental schemes. I didn't present these results, but we do that in the paper. But the public support goes to less farms because it goes only to those that are compensated. Not sure that's clear. We can discuss afterwards.
And there's a link with this story about beliefs, which is the more pessimistic the farmers compared to the true distribution, the larger the gap between an agro-environmental scheme that needs to induce participation to begin with for all farmers by paying all farmers with something that is just compensating you when you make losses. If you are very pessimistic, you're going to need a huge amount of money in order to be willing to enroll in a scheme, in the first scheme, whereas you would be paid only with a small probability if, in fact, the risk is small. So it's very, it's something that is very important in the design. You're right.
Peter. Mathilde, si tu veux intervenir à distance.
Non, comme en fait, moi, je ne suis pas du tout spécialiste des agriculteurs et tout ça, j'écoute, j'apprends plein de choses, mais je vous laisse discuter.
Ok, merci. Peter?
Marianne, a comment on your choice experiment reflecting our experience. When we started our work, we thought, well, what should you do? You should go talk to farmers, find out what they're interested in. And we found out very quickly that they hated insurance, they distrusted insurance companies, and that it was the most stupid idea in the world that they had ever heard, because we were proposing something that more or less didn't exist in the world. And so we went away, and after some fairly, negative exchanges, being run out of town, anyway, so we went away and we thought we would put all our efforts into designing something that was as close to real as possible. And so when we took our prototype insurance to the farmers, we knew it was structurally sound from an insurance point of view. We'd had feedback from WTW and brokers on underwriters on that. We had a pricing that was quite plausible, and so we were saying, we don't want your general uninformed opinion. We want you to tell us what you think of this thing. And you can see that the results we got from their purchases of the policies during the games, and we kept all those data for those analyses, was, reasonably close to what happened in reality. In our cotton work, we've gone through a phase of asking cotton growers what they think of insurance, but in this case we've used the example from our sugarcane work for that conversation, and it's not been very productive, because they say, well, sugarcane's a different plant to a cotton plant and it grows differently, and how on earth could something in sugarcane work here, not underlying the generality that, well, yes, different plant science would have to be behind a cotton product, but conceptually, the outline is there. So even when we get that close to providing them, farmers, with a sort of a viable template of what could happen for them, they still are very negative about it because they hate insurance, they hate paying insurance premiums, insurance companies can't be trusted, they never pay out, etc., etc. So I think there's a really interesting tension here in this area of development between perhaps some of the traditional approaches versus a real participatory learning approach where you know, you're engaging farmers in something real that they have control over. You know, that's a whole other, participatory learning is a whole other you know, basis of theory around how you develop and stimulate adoption of innovations, as you guys undoubtedly know. So just a comment, I'm not sure if there's any questions, comments in the room, other people's experiences, whether they, which side of the debate they might land on.
I can add something as well, if there is.
Yes, Sarah.
We did the same type of experimentation in Tunisia for olive producers and cereals. And you know that Tunisia, it's a country where there is an imbalance trade because they import almost 65% of the food, of the raw material in food, I mean, in the country. So there is a real risk in the long term under climate change variability for them to think about insurance schemes. But for them, when we did, we combined the same type of studies, but we did under climate change, and we showed that by 2050, production of olive production will be reduced by 18% on average, all right? So this is a clear signal, economic signal, where insurance plays a role, and they would be happy in the conversation and all the things because they think this is the only way they can survive to what is happening in this country. We did the same in France, in Normandy region, which is not the same than Nouvelle-Aquitaine. And it's not compensation that they were looking for, but the recognition that they are producing more than food materials. And I'm wondering if the question here, it's not a matter of insurance or not. I think it's a good tool anyway, but the perception for farmers to tell them that it's not compensation, it's not an offset logic, but it's a type of rewarding for the ecosystem services they are producing at different levels, at different scales, that should be paid for. And then you can open the door to who is going to pay, and probably France's strategy has a lot to say who is going to pay, but I think that we need to start to rephrase how we can value more the work of farmers beyond only what they producing on the farm, I think.
Thank you.
Maybe, can I add just a word? I'm not sure that it's the role of insurance to value what farmers create, but it's a very good point. But it raises a point that I don't think we mentioned, which is we used to view moral hazard as being this problem of not applying pesticides and fertilizers enough. But today the problem the problem of moral hazard in insurance tends to be apparently that it may hinder adaptation. And so this is something that comes up very much in the recent literature, that in some contexts, insurance, in fact, delays adaptation by farmers. And this is something that maybe makes even more the case for having specified contracts, specific green insurance contracts, etc., etc., so as to avoid this problem.
I'm just going to endorse what you just said there, Cécile, because there can be perverse incentives created by insurance solutions if you de-risk an activity, which frankly is risky. Maybe you shouldn't be doing it. It might have environmental impacts. And, correct, exactly. So, although I'm an insurance guy, I don't wholly endorse the use of insurance solutions to meet every single problem. So I think, and that's of course because we're not actually valuing ecosystem services in that equation accurately. And by the way, that goes for buildings, flood insurance in the wrong place. It's not just unique to agriculture.
Another point for debate. We know that more and more input providers now sell package, including pesticides, but also DSS and insurance. And these, they have the incentive to provide DSS that are quite conservative, because in that case, they will have to pay less with the insurance if they are the own insurer. So a question for Cécile, can your model capture that? The impact of the insurance being more or less conservative on the learning phase? And maybe also if some input providers in the room can reflect on that.
Okay, so the model wasn't written to do that, but I could adjust for that. What I heard was that I think it was Xario was doing this. Well, I think a number of firms that were doing this stopped doing it in recent years. Yeah, no. Okay, so I'll let you talk about this. This was a research direction that we dropped, but maybe wrongly. Still, I agree that, and it was mentioned this morning, and you asked a question about that, I think. How to structure insurance contracts taking into account the suppliers and the buyers, the whole supply chain, that would be very interesting.
Thank you. Better this way. Yes, I am from BASF, so this same company. And you're right, we launched roughly 5 years ago a new offer based in économie de la fonctionnalité, which would be a product as a service offer. And it's called Healthy Fields. And we are still active in the market. On last campaign, we covered actually 30,000 hectares. And the goal for this campaign is to double, so to come to 60,000 hectares. So it's a widely spread model, and this is still increasing. I think your question about the model is very pertinent, because the fear, if I understand, is that as we manage the DSS, the product supply, and also we take the risk, so we want to protect us against the risk, maximizing the treatments. But actually, what is occurring is the opposite, because, well, in the traditional business model, of course, the fungicide, in this case is only fungicide, are our source of income. But in Healthy Fields, when the only thing we sell is a healthy hectare, so the fungicide becomes our source of cost. And in this case, when the DSS says that it's not compulsory treating, we are always trying to avoid to treat, so we can save money and be more profitable. That's the way. So we always try to treat the less we can, always, promising the clean, the healthy fields. So this is the promise, the healthy fields, and we sell it with this promise and a warranty in case of we are not at the level. But we could imagine, as you say, in the future, how to put a commitment on environmental KPIs, for example. This is not the case today, but for tomorrow, yeah, we are actually working on it.
Why insurance payments, they are also cost for you, no? When you have to reimburse the farmers.
Yeah, of course. For the moment, we don't. Yeah. For the moment, we don't work with an insurance, so it's on our own funds, and that's why our model actually are very good. For instance, in a quite easy year like this campaign, we had less than 2% of compensation, and we achieved to lower the TFI. Thank you. So we could lower significantly the TFI, and we had a very few indemnization. But as the previous campaign, we just treated 3 times in cereals, so this is quite the maximum, and the same that the other people without healthy fields. And even in this case, we had to compensate and to trigger the compensation even if we did the whole treatment program, so it was also unfair to us because we had the full cost on treatment and also the compensation. But this is the way it works, and we are constantly improving, and actually this gap you are mentioning now has played more against us than in our favor.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. That's why I'm here today. Yeah, you are absolutely right, and this is a good improvement gap we still have to tackle, because today, yes, we have an improvement on the environmental footprint, but we are not measuring it yet. We are not capturing this value yet, neither the grower. So this is an improvement gap.
Okay. Are there any other comments, or otherwise Jan will have an explanation to us on what are the key points mentioned by colleagues and you